Okay, what's going on everyone? Doc here, and today I'm going to do a little bit of a different video here where I'm going to be taking all the 2019 champion releases and ranking them from S to E tier. Um, as all ranking tier lists go, it's all my personal opinion. I have tried to back it up with as much testing as I could of all the champions, with as much gameplay videos as I can see for anyone that I don't have or didn't get to test in the content creator program. I thought this would be an interesting thing to do this year, since this is my first half year since August in the content creator program, and I got to test out a lot more champions, see a lot more, and be a lot more involved in the community than I have been in previous years. First off, before I start though, just like last year, this time when I thanked you all for 100 subscribers, I want to thank you all for 700 now. That's an incredible growth this year, and hopefully into 2020 I can continue to provide even better content for you guys, and hopefully grow the channel even more, because I really enjoy doing this, and it's a ton of fun, and honestly gets me a little bit outside my comfort zone as well, which is really interesting. So yeah, let's get started off with S tier. So I completed the tier list beforehand just so I could just talk about everything instead of moving all the little character portraits around. So I have 6 characters in S tier: Doctor Doom, Namor, Nick Fury, Warlock, Thing, and Black Widow Clairvoyant. So they're all in here for various different reasons, but they all have very similar things in common. They all have damage and utilities. Some have synergies, and they're all incredibly helpful. And I'm sure if anyone were to add any of them to their roster, they'd be very, very happy. So starting off with Doom, Doom has Nullify. He's a very tanky character, great damage, and just all around by far the best, not really by far, but definitely the best Mystic this year. Black Widow Clairvoyant kind of comes close in some regards, but he is definitely the standout Mystic champion of this year. All around a fantastic addition, definitely lives up to the Doctor Doom comic canon. Next up, Namor. Namor's utility is by far and beyond one of the most interesting, and it's just incredibly helpful as well. Just being able to reflect Thorn's damage, Electro damage, Korg damage, any sort of damage you take when you attack into the opponent, you can reflect it. You can also reflect your own damage over time debuffs from suicides or even from biohazard. He definitely needs a bit. The higher the sig, the better. But even at a low sig, it'll help mitigate that damage, and it'll also help kill the opponent a little bit faster as well. In addition to that, he has incredible burst damage with stacking Furies from his SP3 and then using an SP2. Nick Fury's a little bit more lacking in the utility than some of the other champions here, but his damage is phenomenal. His synergies are incredible as well, infecting anyone on the team but himself. And because of that, it's basically utility to the whole team, which is just a really interesting thing to add. Very similar to Heimdall in that regard, and Heimdall's one of my favorites as well. His damage is also phenomenal as well. He has a little bit of utility with his tactical charges into the soaring from his SP1, and then his bleed damage is just above and beyond. Warlock is my favorite champion of 2019 by far. He's also one of the very few that I have on this list. I have a couple of them as 5 stars, but he's the only one that I have as a maxed 5-star. Warlock is incredible. He has immunities, he has utilities, and surprisingly enough, he has damage once you get those armor breaks up. His damage is actually really good. Hits something for like 17,000 heavy attack crits. It's really, really good. I will hopefully be putting out a how to use guide on Warlock very soon. That'll cover a little bit more of my thoughts on him there, but just a phenomenal champion. The Thing as well is fantastic. The best member of the Fantastic Four. He has damage utilities and immunities, and with that full synergy team, he just absolutely wrecks everything in his path. Black Widow Clairvoyant is a personal favorite of mine. She's probably one of the lowest of the S tier, although these are in no particular order. She has immunities and utility. Her damage is slightly lacking, but she can do a burst damage of 2,500 per hit if you use her SP3 to get Death Touch active, and then use her Curse of Hellfire with an SP2. deals some really good burst damage. And that was with a 5-star R3 that I'm getting that number from, that 2500 extra per hit. So higher rank will do even more extra burst damage. And just being able to punish having immunities in the opponent while keeping your own immunities is just a really interesting utility. And she's just overall a ton of fun to play as well. So that's A tier. That's S tier. Sorry, let's go into A tier now. A tier has a ton of phenomenal champions as well. These characters are really good. They're just not quite the best characters. First off, Captain Marvel movie, great damage. Indestructible is great for tanking SP3s. Her utility is slightly far behind, but her damage is just phenomenal. Sunspot is pretty similar, great damage. Really interesting play style. A little bit of damage over time as well if you get enough stun rates up, but most of the time you just want to pull those back into power for yourself anyways. But overall, really good champion to play. It's also a prestige monster at 6-star. And he doesn't quite need a dupe ability. Cat Marvel needs her dupe ability for that indestructibility. His dupe ability gives him a little bit more damage depending on how you play him, and for longer fights it can be more helpful. Spider-Man Stealth Enhanced is a very good champion. Anyone with a slow debuff stop unstoppable is really good. He has an interesting playstyle and a lot of damage. Watched a lot of gameplay of him, but I haven't quite had the chance to try him out, but I'd really like to at some point. But he definitely seems like a very strong champion in that both damage and utilities. Human Torch is a really interesting one. He seems phenomenal against Mystics, and I actually have a 5-star unduped of him that I tested out, and he just absolutely shredded. As a rank 1 5-star, he shredded a maxed out for Dr. Voodoo. His damage is really good. He can stop healing as well, so he has some interesting utility. A little bit of immunity as well, Incinerate immune. And he's a really interesting champion. Definitely best against Mystics. Not quite as strong as other fights, but if you use his pre-fight ability, can make him even stronger to start at the fight as well. So, really interesting champion. Guillotine 2099 is somewhere between B and A tier, actually, surprisingly enough. I kind of got over combo champions after I did Realm Legends with Star-Lord. The fact that you can make a single mistake and lose all of your damage is really not that good a thing anymore. Guillotine 2099 does have the combo shield charges, but it's not like Aegon, where Aegon has that persistent combo. You can start off with 100 hits in her combo meter, but it's still possible to lose, and then you just have to redo the whole thing again. But that's all that said, though, she does have utilities. She has that interesting synergy for increased power gain, and her damage is really good once ramped up. Personally, I'm just not a fan of the whole getting to the ramp up part every single fight. Although starting 100 hits does help, just not my thing personally. But I still say she's a solid A tier. Mysterio would probably be S tier if it wasn't for Warlock. Mysterio also has the utility of the passive heal block as well. Only those 2 characters have it so far. And his is really easy to access as well, just ending a combo on a light attack. He has some really good damage as well with an SP3 and a poison, but just not quite as strong as Warlock, I think, with his missing immunities. Cull Obsidian, his damage is undeniably good. That's pretty much it. He does take a lot of chip damage, though. Survivability isn't that good, but his damage is just really good. Almost too good to pass up with that route. Okay, next up, B tier. I know a lot of you Havoc players have probably been looking for him and wondering why he wasn't an S and A. I've seen him ranked there in a lot of other people's tier lists, but personally I put him to B tier for a kind of similar reason to Guillotine 2099, needing that ramp up in a kind of unfun way of just using your heavy attack. But Havoc's ramp up, the problem with it is it gets some really good burst damage. But if that burst damage does not kill the opponent and they're not even close to death, let's say they're at like 30-40%, then you have to go through that whole ramp up one more time. And to me, I've tried him out as a 5-star duped, R3, and the ramp up is slow. And if it doesn't get the kill, then it's just another slow ramp up period. It just feels like you build up for a nice burst, and then if it doesn't get the kill, you just gotta redo it again. It's just a pain. But he does have his uses against someone like against Korg and all that. And burst damage is really helpful against characters that get stuff at certain health levels. So he's a solid B tier. Vision Arcus, somewhere between B and C, I guess, would be around where he is. He's currently bugged, or at least last I saw he was bugged to do some insane damage. If you play really aggressive with him, his Cold Snap will stop evades, which is really helpful. He has a lot of power gain, which can be nice, and his damage wasn't too bad at all. During my testing of him with the CCP, it just wasn't phenomenal by any means. That's basically what B tier is. It's solid, but not phenomenal by any means. Man Thing is a really good other example of that. Great poison damage, great survivability, but if they're poison immune, then he is severely lacking. He also, although he's very similar to Dr. Voodoo in terms of the damage you can place and the matchups where he's really good at, he lacks that power gain, or power control that Dr. Voodoo has. And I compared the two a lot when I did the gameplay of him. I still stand by it. He's like a budget Voodoo, I guess, that's a little bit more survivability. Just because he can place so much damage. He just doesn't have that power control, though, that a lot of Mystics need. Both Doom and Black Widow Clairvoyant have that power control. Elsa Bloodstone is a ton of fun. First off, she gets that you don't need to parry the opponent to get that attack opportunity. You can parry them. She gets the evade, and you can use that to turn into a combo. She has both Incinerate and Cold Snap damage, and there's not too many champions who are immune to both of them. Her damage overall is really interesting, but in my opinion, she's become one of the best void counters in the game just because of her unique utility to shrug off undamaging debuffs passively after a set amount of time. So they'll just remove, and against someone like Void, that can be really helpful because you only take a little bit of damage there. You don't need to be watching your combo meter constantly. And she also gets a precision buff when she does that to increase her damage. Great damage against XL and against Science Champions as well. Through her dupe ability, because the Huntress of the Continents, or whatever it's called. She's a solid B. She is a solid B tier champion in my opinion. Same with Ronin, another skilled champion who has really, really good bleed damage, really good burst damage. But if they're bleed immune, he's lacking, and also Ronin's utility is lacking behind. At least Elsa Bloodstone can stop evades with her Cold Snap, and if you play aggressive, you can keep that up pretty well. But even trying Ronin out, trying to play fully, reducing defensive ability accuracy to stop evades, to stop Magic's Limbo Trigger, he was really unable to do that, and because of that, he's not as strong a skilled champion as many, many other options. So C tier now, these are the ones that don't quite have as much potential as B tier, even in the right matchups. Although they're usable and they might pose some potential, they're just not nearly as strong, and some are almost annoying to play. Annihilus, luckily not annoying to play. Sorry, Champion Nova, he's down in C tier, but he has some really interesting burst damage, but he just doesn't have utilities or immunities that a lot of other characters have. And the most damage you can do with him is really burst. And that's similar to Invisible Woman. I'll get to her in a second. Silver Surfer. I really disliked Silver Surfer. It takes a lot of work to get his timing working on all of his buffs. Once you get there, it's fine, and you can kind of survive there. And it doesn't really require ramp up and re-ramp up like someone like Havoc does. But his damage is nothing phenomenal by any means. His immunities are there and they're interesting. I like the fact that he reduces it to 0 damage so you can get the willpower instead of just removing them. But overall, I felt he was not nearly as strong as many other options in the contest for anything that he was okay at. Like Freezer Burn, he got no damage from those debuffs, but someone like Human Torch would do much, much better in those paths. He's just not the best for anything, and that's very similar to Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister holds really nothing special. He's good, but he's not the best. He has that interesting utility of being able to take his damage and debuffs and transfer them to the opponent, and then you can pause him with a heavy attack, but there's nothing really. Your heavy attack isn't infinite, so you can't hold it forever. It works, but it's just not the best option out there. He's much more of a defender champion. Same with Nihilus at the moment. They're both usable, and someone who gets them as a 4-star will be able to do some pretty good work with them. Any of these champions that I've talked about, so if anyone in the C and above tier, anyone who gets these champions would be able to use them all the way through Act 4 and into Act 5, which is one of the reasons why 2015 is one of 2015. What the hell am I saying? 2019 is one of the best years so far. Mr. Fantastic next. Mr. Fantastic, it has some really good utility. He was able to take out 626 Hyperion. He was able to take out Realm Legend Wolverine all on his own with no Fantastic Four synergies. But overall, he's very much similar to Silver Surfer. Very much a watch timer kind of character, where you're just spending forever watching the debuffs, making sure you parry and land a heavy attack, otherwise all your damage goes away. His SP3 gives him a nice fury, but to do that you need a lot of debuffs in the opponent, so it's a lot of ramp up, and it's a very interesting, very difficult style to play where you could easily lose all your damage. And Invisible Woman is similar. If you lose all your vulnerability debuffs that you're placed on the opponent at any point with Invisible Woman, there goes your damage pretty much. She's interesting in that very heavy burst damage that she can get, but she's just a too high risk, high reward gameplay, in my opinion. But I would absolutely love to try her out a little bit more. But right now she's C tier from all the gameplay that I've seen. Even with all the Fantastic Four synergies, she's just not as strong as characters like Human Torch or The Thing. And finally, in a D and E tier, you have Diablo and Ebony Maw. I felt like it was good to have 6 tiers in this because Diablo, I need to make sure that he is above Ebony Maw. Make that distinction there, because although they are both bad, Ebony Maw is severely worse. Diablo has utility. He has a lot of utility. He has extra burst energy damage, he has nullify, he has power gain, he has regeneration. The problem is, once you use up all your potions on Diablo, you have none of that. And he only has a set number of potions he can use in any quest. And because of that, he's easily a D tier. Despite having a lot of potential, he just falls flat in the use of his potions. It's a shame. He's kind of fun to play as well. So, E tier, Ebony Maw. Ebony Maw does not have that utility. He does not have that extra energy damage. Doesn't really have that potential right now. At most, he's Defender. And if you have the right counter to him, he's not even that. Hopefully, in 2020, February, I think, is when we'll hear about the buffs to characters like Ebony Maw and Diablo. Actually, we won't be hearing about Diablo, but we'll hear about Ebony Maw and many others that came out after him and around the same time. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully I can move Maw up a couple tiers after that. And yeah, so that sums up the 2019 tier list. Overall, fantastic year of champions, very heavily towards that SAB tiers, with much fewer in the D and E tiers, which is great. Overall, everyone has some really helpful use, except for a couple, Ebony Maw, that I'm sure any player could make good use of, especially in early acts and that kind of stuff. So that sums up this video. Thank you all for watching. In the coming week or so, I'll be doing a video on Warlock, on how to use him, and a video on how to use Wasp as well. because my video from over like a year ago was not nearly as good as I want it to be compared to my current how to use videos. So that's going to sum up this one. Thank you all for watching. Have a good one, and I will see you in the next video. I'm not going to say in the next year because that's dumb, but see you in the next video. Have a good one.